Hello and welcome to this episode of the Horst No Name podcast. This is our second podcast for the 2015-16 academic year. We had our men's basketball only podcast the other day with former head coach Zach Filzen and student athlete CJ Dunstan. Today we're going to focus on all the sports in the 2015-16 year and start off with an interview with our current women's lacrosse coach, Cheri Horst. Cheri, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're excited to do this. 2016 was a big year for the women's lacrosse program. They advanced to the NEAC Playoffs for the first time in program history. I had a great season, lots of different parts that kind of fit together for that season. They won a lot of close games. We're going to talk about that here with Cheri, and Bob and I are looking forward to that. Before we begin, Bob, how are you this morning as well?
I'm doing great. Zach, I was thinking today, coming in to work and everything, do you remember about 6 or 7 years ago, we were getting ready for snow and it's 80 degrees today. This is insane. And the other thing that I've been thinking about, how many falls have we done where we've just had a lot of rain? I know spring generally has a lot of rain, but there's been some fall seasons. This fall season would have been perfect to have a ton of outdoor events. The weather has been amazing. And of course, we've got nothing.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've woken up a lot of mornings and it's been so beautiful. It's the same every year. On the day that I got married, it snowed 22 inches. And since that day, there's not been an inch of snow. It's been about 60 degrees. And it's been beautiful every day since that day. But good memories nonetheless. But yeah, we were actually up in the Donkey this morning, the press box there. We had chapel this morning led by our student athletes. It was such a great experience. Chase Reed, one of our cross country runners, did an awesome job preaching, and had a bunch of great ladies lead worship as well from a couple of different teams. But it was kind of weird to climb the ladder and get up there, and I missed it all of a sudden. Not all the days, but there's been some nights where it would have been a great night for soccer or field hockey, or it's fun for. We're going to talk about some women's volleyball matches here. They came back from 2-0 down. It's just kind of fun to be in the gym some nights. And it was one thing I'm certainly starting to miss. Hopefully we have some news here coming out that we may try to play some basketball here pretty soon. Not here necessarily, but gonna try and play. But we'll announce that when the time is right. But yeah, absolutely. There's been it's always fun to look at the forecast and see there's still some 70s in there and high 60s, and then I'm sure next fall it'll be 45 in the middle of October and rainy,
snowing. Yeah.
Snow, and yeah, absolutely.
Poor Minneapolis yesterday. They got like 5 inches of snow. It was crazy out there.
Absolutely nuts. The weather is crazy here in the fall and the spring, and but yeah, a lot of nice nights here this fall for sure. It's so again, that the being not here at LBC, sometimes it's nice to be at home for some of those nights too, and it's nice, but nevertheless. So
yeah, Cheri, if you can schedule this fall weather for your spring lacrosse season, we would thoroughly appreciate that.
Well, we did just have a very beautiful spring. I did numerous times say, okay, Lord, the humor here, I'm not getting it. As we had COVID and trapped inside so we could be outside, but the whole time I'm going, this is the season I have prayed for every year.
Yeah, there's been some really cold lacrosse games in the past, but anyway.
Absolutely. So Cheri, if we can go back to the 2016 season, your first year was the year before in 2015, coming into the 2016 season. So from that 2015 team, though, Alyssa Wessner, Miranda Kemmer return, Hannah Thompson is added, Naomi Otis as well. What excited you about the team heading into that 16 season? You knew you had some athletes, even with your daughter Reagan, who was supposed to play, hurt her knee at the end of the soccer season, so she couldn't play, but was still a part of the program and helpful in practices and things like that. But what excited you despite the year before's record?
I think the year before's record was actually exciting because we doubled our wins from the year before. So that was exciting for them. And I mean, for me, I had just started literally right before the season started. So it gave us a year to get to know each other. They got to know me a little better as a coach and everything like that. So I think the excitement going in was a familiarity. Like, okay, we know what we're getting into. We know what we're coming into. And we were excited to learn how to win. That's what I told. Our goal going into the whole season that year was, let's learn how to win.
Absolutely. And so we dropped the opener to Bryn Mawr, but then beat Rosemont to get to 1-1. and then the team has to leave for spring break. But what are you guys practice for a bunch of weeks before the season, again, whether it be inside or outside occasionally. We didn't have the turf field at that time, so it was harder to practice outside during preseason for spring sports. But how did the team feel leaving for spring break that year? 1-1, couple of good things, and a win.
Yeah, it was huge to come off that win, and a win that we won by 10. So we had a running clock for that game also, which is a big step for us, to even understand what that feels like and how you win with that. So I think there was a definite confidence leaving for spring break and an excitement to come back. Like, oh, we could do this.
Absolutely. And so that leads into another victory, defeating Cedar Crest, puts us over the 500 mark for the first time in ever-ish, maybe. I'd have to go back and look, but and then we even play Randolph tough down in Lynchburg, and so dropped to 2-2, but at the same time still pretty exciting to put those two games together where you can get a win but then play a pretty tough team well on their home field.
Yeah, and it was a long trip for us. It was a good trip. I remember that one, and we did have an injury in that trip, which was tough, but injuries sometimes allow a team to rally too. So I know Lydia had gotten hurt in that trip, and just everyone rallying around like, okay, now this is what we've been dealt. What are we going to do about it? So that's how we kind of went into that next game then at Keystone.
And so that's where we'll take our first pause here in the schedule. So it's the 5th game of the year. It's a Thursday afternoon, La Plume, Pennsylvania. It's at Keystone, and so we've had a couple of different games throughout our program's history with Keystone that they're not usually 4-3 games, and this was another example of that. So we win 26-18. It's the most goals we've ever scored in the game. Alyssa Western had 11 goals and 5 assists. Take us through that day. What do you remember? Obviously, lots of goals. It's a really long game. For those that don't know, lacrosse is insane after you score. You have to check your stick. Everyone's got to adjust their socks, and we all kind of walk back to the center. And so when you're doing this 44 times, it's very, very long. So what do you remember from that day?
Okay, first of all, longest game of our life. I mean, and that was pre self-start rules too. So the game it was for sure 3.5 hours. We were losing daylight. And it was exhausting. Alyssa was on fire. They did not know what to do with her. They were trying everything to stop her, but that was, and it was a back and forth game. I was trying, memory a couple years ago, but it was a definite back and forth game. And when we started to pull ahead, just how the girls, you could just see it in their eyes. I was like, oh my word, this is going to happen. And so to us, this was a huge upset as far as being able to get that many goals, work together, and exhausting in that how long, and we still had to drive how many hours home yet, but that was a fun drive. It's a fun drive when you can pull that off.
Absolutely. Those are always the fun wins. It takes forever to get there, but then it seems like it's a really short trip home when everyone's happy and eating and enjoying themselves. So
yeah.
I just remember getting the box score and probably getting a text from you and just like, you didn't want to go for 2 at the end? Like, what? This is like a football score. So it was, I can remember writing about that and thinking about that and just how big of a win that was, again, getting back over 500. And again, these are small victories, but 3 wins. This is cresting near where we're usually at for the season. This is through 5 games. So win again then at Waynesburg, at home against Waynesburg, a big victory there. Go to 4-2, kind of feeling pretty good. And again, that's 2 days after playing such a long game at Keystone. What did you do in practice the middle day there? Not much.
Recover.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember, what did we do in practice? I mean, you still look at a game and you go, okay, what could we have done well? And you just fine tune. There was a couple plays that we were working on. I remember we didn't have a lot of them. We only had a couple, but they executed them in the Keystone game. So there was a confidence to execute them again in the Waynesburg game. So I do remember that part. As far as the game in between, though, it for sure was recovery day because we didn't get back till late on Thursday night to come back again on Saturday at 1. Definitely had to have that recovery time too. So it was more just review and refresh and go at it again.
Sure thing. And so one of the things though after this is we're going to lose 3 straight games and we dropped to 4 and 5, lost there to Moravian and to SUNY Poly. Again, it's not like we're losing to bad teams here, and then lose the close game to Medaille on the second day of a back-to-back up there in Buffalo. It's not an easy trip. You have to play Poly at the time. Anyway, you had to play Poly on the first day or Medaille, vice versa. Then you basically had to drive across the state from Utica to Buffalo in a night and then get up and play the next day. So what did you kind of do to reset? So again, you have these wins and we're at 4 wins. This is great. And then 3 losses, 2 to open NEAC play with SUNY Poly and Medaille. Then there's a reset there. What did you guys do to kind of reset?
Well, I think I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Those 3 losses, we had some interesting road trips in there that were great learning experiences and really brought them together as a team. Moravian, we hit traffic that we couldn't deal. Like we knew we were going to hit traffic, but we ended up sitting on the highway forever. So literally by the time we got to Moravian and we couldn't find our way around, they had all their roads closed. It was just a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And we literally got there into the locker room 10 minutes before game time. So people still needed to see an athletic trainer. People still needed to, it was just a mental chaos for them. So to play that game we were beat before it started. So learning from that, we go into SUNY Poly and we were excited. We were able to get, Alyssa's dad drove us and we were able to get a bus, which was awesome because we could all travel together up there, except that it broke down on the way there. So there was that. So we went into Poly late also to that game. So right away, learning how to band together, pick each other up and go, okay, now we just dropped 2 big losses. We got to go into play Medaille 3.5 more hours in this praying we get there trip. The girls did a phenomenal job. Medaille was shocked because they just went out to play. I remember they were just like, we have nothing to lose. Let's go play. And they just went at them. They were super aggressive. We were working on an attack mentality rather than waiting. Like, go get the ball, go in an attack mode, rather than expecting them to come right down our throats. And they did that against Medaille. We didn't win, but they felt like they had won, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So going into confidence.
Absolutely. So then it's one of these things with the lacrosse schedule, or I guess the former lacrosse schedule, is every other year you had to make 2 trips to New York because more teams were in New York than Pennsylvania. So literally the next weekend we have to go back to upstate New York and play at Wells and at Cuca. Again, these are not easy places to play. There's not a whole lot to do. You're basically driving, playing, driving, sleeping, playing, driving. It's not a fun weekend. I made that trip twice when I coached lacrosse a few years prior to you. These are not, oh, let's go to the Finger Lakes. Like, no, it's get me to a pillow and get me home. That's kind of what that trip is like. But we win a close game, 14-13 over Wells. It's our first NEAC win. And again, you can come back and pause wherever you'd like to. But then the next day, beat Cuca by 6, and I'm pretty sure that's the first time we ever beat Cuca. These are massive games. Now we're 2-2 in conference play. We're back over at the 500 mark overall. 6 wins, to my knowledge at the time, was the program record. So now we're setting records and we're feeling good. How is the team doing? I'm sure that's a great trip home as well Saturday afternoon.
That was an amazing trip home, and I remember that Cuca game. We warmed up terrible. We were exhausted from the day before, and the girls are like, these are just, I remember it's like, these drills aren't working for us. We're not getting warmed up. And I'm like, listen, I remember we talk about this every year, and I talk to the team about it, and like, the drill is not what makes the warm up. The player preparing for it is what makes it. I was like, so you got a decision to make. You got a decision that it's not the drill that makes or breaks this game. It's you. And man, that 10 minutes to go till we played that game, I saw a whole different team, and it was, gotta say, that's probably one of my most favorite wins ever, because that's all I'll say. The girls will know.
And it's great to kind of reminisce and think through these things, because at the time, and perhaps it still exists, although we've lost some teams from the NEAC, I think there were 5 or 6 teams that made the playoffs at this point. I think it was 5 this year. And and sort of 3, if not even 4, you knew were going to make the playoffs. Right. So it basically came down to 3 teams, 4 teams some years fighting for one playoff berth. And this year, the year we're talking 2016, it was us, a little bit of maybe Bryn Athyn at sometimes, Penn State Abington. Well, one of those teams is going to get the 5th seed, and we had to play Penn State Abington here, and we win 13-12. And I don't know that we knew at the time, but you kind of start checking off these boxes of, okay, that team can't catch us. Even if they do, we have the tiebreaker. And this is one of those games where, okay, now we've got that in our back pocket. What was said prior to the Penn State Abington game in terms of, hey, I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but if we win this game, these things can start to happen. Or if we lose this game, not very many of these things can happen.
Right. I mean, that for sure. Thankfully, you kept me on track with that kind of stuff, because I try not to focus too much on it, because every game's an important game and you got to go into it with the same mentality. But that one for sure, they had extra motivation for that win. That was home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yep.
I think we were up on the soccer field because we were able to move to that field that year. That was huge. That was a huge win for them, just going in with a mentality. Again, they learned that attack mentality, so they had that confidence going in, going, this is ours to take. And if I walk away, if we walk away without it, it's because we didn't do what we needed to do.
Absolutely. I'm looking at the box score now, and it's a back and forth game. We led by 3 at one point, and then they scored 4 straight goals, and we trailed by 1, and then we scored 4 straight goals, and we're up by 3, but then they scored twice in the final 20 seconds. I'm sure you loved that. And
20 seconds of my life there.
So it's one of those things where these games that we won this year, and I'll ask you as we get towards the end here, what was it about this team where it was a close game and somehow they knew it was theirs? Or was there a person on the team who said, all right, everybody back up, I got it? Or what was it that made this team a little different in that regard, where close games didn't seem to bother them?
Yeah, and that's where I look back and go, okay, because I mean, obviously after this, we'll talk about that a little bit, where we did fall off. So I think that mentally we had that ride where they were just so mentally strong and they trusted each other. I wouldn't say that for sure there was this person that said, let's go, guys. I think that they really decided it together. There was definitely a couple that were more vocal about it, but everybody was just on board together. Like they knew they could do it. And I think in that game, it was, okay, we're at home and we can make this happen. And they had that, I keep going to that attack mentality, but it's just that it's ours and we can have it thing. So that doesn't really help you as far as specifics, but.
No, it's good. Because I think that, again, and I'll ask it here at the later part as we keep going through the season, it just seemed like there was, again, to your point, whether it be an attack mentality or just a kind of a group effort of, no, we're good.
Yeah.
Like, we got it kind of thing. So I was just curious to hear more about that. And so we'll keep going here. We beat St. Elizabeth. I think this is kind of the part where you kind of know, like, hey, the playoffs are a thing. We've beaten everybody who's below us. No one can catch us. A 4-game win streak. I'm pretty sure that was the longest we ever had. We're at 8 wins now. This is so then, not unfortunately, but the top 2 teams in the conference at the time to come to Lancaster the following weekend in Cazenovia and Morrisville State. We played Cazenovia not here. We must have had field issues that we moved it to Manheim Township.
That's what I was we went to Manheim Township for that one.
Yeah.
And then Morrisville, did we go somewhere else also?
I have it here that we played Morrisville at home. The following year we did go to, or 2 years later, we went to Palmyra to play Manheim Township.
I think it, no.
Yeah, that's what that was for sure that year. So anyway, we lose to Kaz, lose to Morrisville. I'm not sure, even at the time, there was a lot of prevailing thought, like, I don't think we thought we were going to lose by 15 and 13 goals, but at the same time, it would have been a pretty big upset to beat Casanova and Morrisville at this time anyway, with the program. But I think the game that is probably tough even now thinking about is the regular season loss to Bryn Athyn to end the regular season there. What happened there? It was, they didn't make the playoffs. They were below us in the standings. Just overthinking it, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that maybe a little overconfidence going into that one, like because we were above them, and we did just come off of two. Whether we expected maybe those losses, they're still not easy to swallow, and both of them were by more than 10, so we were running clocked on both of them. So it kind of was a little blow to the ego. And so you have that blow to the ego, and then you go in going, oh, okay, well, we'll just finish out strong with this one, and not really mentally ready to go into that Bryn Athyn game. And I remember the goalie was a little intimidating for Bryn Athyn. She definitely carried herself really well and was very vocal. And you go in not necessarily mentally ready for what was coming at you, and then have that tough goalie, and we just collapsed. But again, you go through this whole roller coaster of the season where mentally you're not sure, then you're super confident, and then you get smacked down, and just trying to figure out how to lift back up again. But that Bryn Athyn one definitely should have been a win for us.
So, and I agreed. I kind of remember this, and it was a close game, and they scored a couple goals late in the game to win. But regardless, we make the playoffs. How did you start? I mean, and it's a quick turn. We played Bryn Athyn on Friday. I think the next day we had Shady's Rugged Run. So I'm assuming that's why we played Friday, not Saturday. That's my memory. I don't know. But we have to go to Madai and play Tuesday. So that means you're leaving Monday night, right?
Yes.
So did you practice here Monday and then go, or did you practice up there? And if you don't remember, that's okay. Regardless, how do you turn the page? Okay, I know Bryn Athyn stunk. Fine. Here's how we're going to play Madai.
Right. I mean, and having already played Madai earlier in the year is helpful, but we were at a different field too. So, when you play a school, when we played Madai the first time, Madai didn't have their own field. So we were at one place. So you think, oh, well, that's where we're going. Well, we were at Dieuville, I believe, that we played at Dieuville. So even preparing that way, you can't mentally prepare to go to that field either. So we were just trying to go, okay, this is the first time we've ever had the chance to do this. Let's go make the most of it. Let's go out. We know we can play them hard. And we did. I mean, they were a little shocked by us again the second time. I think they thought they were going to own us right away. And am I remembering the right game?
Yeah.
We held with them, didn't we?
Absolutely. So I'll run you through it really quick, and then you can keep going. 3:45 into the game, we're up 4-1.
Yes.
And
okay.
it's again, there's some surprise factor there. Again, lacrosse is only 30 minutes a half, but they're really, really long, and you can have very many chapters in each half. It's amazing how momentum or just getting the draw and whatever. I'm not explaining the game of lacrosse to you. Anyway, they score the next 6 goals, and we trade. It's 7-4 midway through the half. We are down 3 at half later in the game, and then cut it to 3 in the second half, but can't make it any closer than 3 in the second half, and end up losing 15-10. So like you said, couldn't really get over the hump there at the end, but did play them tough. And it's just a really good first playoff experience. What do you remember from that day? And maybe what did you tell the ladies following the game?
I do remember that I felt like we could walk away with our heads held high. I felt like we gave them a run for their money, and that the girls had done what they could do that day. I didn't think we walked away saying shoulda, woulda, coulda. I think that everybody put everything into it. We came out strong like we wanted to, and we did what we could. So that was a game that it was a great playoff experience. It was nothing that we hung our heads on as we walked away.
And so I'll go back to a question I kind of asked earlier. The 2017 team is very, very similar to this team, and then added Reagan and Barb. Is that right?
Yeah. That is right.
So, but they didn't win as many games. They probably had more talent, but these 1 and 2 goal games we lost the following year. So again, I'm not trying to rail on the 2017 team because I think that was probably the most talent we ever had lacrosse wise, or up there anyway with the talent we ever had. Is there something that you can just trace back to, again, I'm not sure if it was a person, but just sometimes this is lacrosse. Is it as simple as that? Like, you miss a draw control and all of a sudden you lose by 1.
Yeah. I think that the 2016 season is the cohesiveness of the team. They had each other's back, not saying that 17 didn't, but I think you're the underdog. 16, we were the underdog. Nobody expected anything out of us. And that's, I think, where you had that surgence of confidence, like, oh, okay, we're the underdogs, and then there's expectation coming in on 17. And I don't know that I mentally necessarily prepared them for that expectation.
That's perfect. That explains. That's awesome. That's exactly what I didn't even know that, but that's the answer right there. That's great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, again, what do you remember from the team? I mean, whether it be practice or a player, I mean, again, it's only your second year. We threw you to the wolves the first year and just said, hey, go learn lacrosse, and, kind of thing. And, but at the same time, that 16 team, a lot of people returned from 15. This is a kind of a group that moved together, 15, 16, 17, things like that. What do you remember, just the kind of, now you're in, 5, 6, 7 years down the road here, and you have a program and you have things that you're for sure. Are the things that just clicked for you that year, maybe on a personal level, coaching wise, or just someone helped you with that year too?
Yeah, that was definitely a growing year from 15 to 16. Me, yes, learning a sport. And I think I had more confidence going in 16. And I think we even talked about, I made the schedule more conducive to learning how to win, also in our out of season things that could maybe help us prepare a little better so we didn't get ramrodded every game. That we had chances to find success and learn success and run plays and things like that. So that, as far as that goes, sticking out, I mean, we had experience on our team. You had Miranda's playing experience. Hannah came in with experience. Cheyenne had experience, and then I moved her out of the goal and put Nicolette, and Sarah even stepped into goal sometimes there. But we brought Katie in from basketball. Naomi came in, Anna played that year. There was just girls that just came in together and decided, well, we want to have some fun. And I learned more about the game. I think that helped, but they were willing to learn with me, which I appreciated.
Absolutely. Bob, do you have anything from this season?
Well, Cheri, I think as you were just describing some players there, I'm looking over the roster from that year, and you had some characters on that team. Do you have any good stories of just players from that year? Because like they are coming from all different areas, and
yeah,
I think women's lacrosse, has been one of those teams that like you truly have started to develop, bringing in players, and I think some of it goes back to 16. Of you had a winning season, and that helps to develop players wanting to come in. And so sometimes you're dealt with who you get, and some of these, like I'm not even going to mention names that I think are so interesting people. They're great ladies. They're all really great ladies, but there are some characters in this group.
For sure. And that, I think, helped bring them all together, because everybody was, we were different. Everybody was very different, but I look at the list and think about some things, and our road trips, we had 2 doozies in a row, and there's a lot you learn about each other in those trips. I mean, there were times Sandy loved to dance, and she was really, really loud, and I appreciated that she kept our sideline going, man. And sometimes the other team didn't quite even know how to handle it, which was great. And I was looking, I'm like, now I'm blanking on the one story I had. Shoot, I'll think of it in a second. But yeah, and we had a lot of ups and downs, even with injuries in that season, as far as there were sometimes we didn't play with enough players on the field. And to be able to come out on top in those games is kind of crazy when you were playing a player down because we had that many injuries. And so, shoot, Bob, now I can't remember the story.
It quite possibly could have been something with Naomi Otis too, because
well, so Naomi got hurt in the Cuca game in pregame. She got hurt, but we didn't realize she got hurt from a pass from Katie. It was just a silly warm up. And I didn't realize she got hurt. Maybe I shouldn't even admit this, because she didn't tell me. She got hit in the head with a little loopy pass, played the whole game, and was horribly sick. She ended up with a severe concussion from that little loopy thing that happened. But hey, it's we had an interesting ride home with that. But yeah,
Well, as you think about it, we typically have asked our guests what they're doing now, but you still work here and you still are coaching lacrosse. But how about like, I know. What about how is the program? What have you guys been doing in the fall? It's the spring is still whatever. And how are you prepping for so many unknowns?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're prepping thinking there's not unknowns. We're going forward like we are ready to roll. We haven't had anything change yet for our schedule, so we keep praying that that's going to be a norm, especially after last season. Fall we have a lot of dual sport athletes, so we're practicing with probably about half our roster right now, but just really working on building strength. They're in the weight room 3 times a week, and they are practicing twice a week right now, together with probably about 10 of us, 10 to 12 at a time right now. So that's going really well. And we're just going ahead like, hey, we're going to go get the season we missed. And that's how we're preparing for that. So.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming by and stopping in from across campus here. No, I'm waving to you. You can wave it. So no, I really appreciate it. And this was a really fun season, the 2016 season.
It was a great season, and there were so many great stories, and I wish I could really remember all of them. And I'm kind of mad at myself now. I should have written them down, because as I was writing the schedule, I'm going, oh my word, I remember that. And oh, I can't believe when that happened. Or we played that game in the pouring rain and my jacket started sudsing because it was I had washed it and didn't get all the soap out of it, so I had like soap coming out of my jacket, things like that. So silly, but we had a lot of fun that season.
That's great. That's a good Tide spot. Good job. That was good.
Yeah.
Good
It was clean.
Well, and lacrosse, the weather can be so different. I mean, you've played games in snow and rain, and then it can be bright and sunny and hot, and like the spring season is just so varied with what can happen. And yeah, Cheri, it's been so much fun watching your teams just develop over the years, and they truly are they're not just learning the game anymore. It's great being able to have players come in and really be key pieces and key skill players for you.
Yeah, it is. It's fun to be able to coach that too.
Oh, I'm sure. Zach, with all of his lacrosse coaching experience,
I had to tell him what a stick was for a little cup. That was our first practice.
The first game the year before when we went to Bryn Mawr, that's what that group that was about the same from the 2015. Half of them, we were on a field for the first time at Bryn Mawr because it had snowed so much the year before. Yeah. And I was showing them what the lines were because we hadn't actually been on a field with lines. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, this we're going to talk about it later in the podcast, but we had almost everyone but one made the NEAC playoffs in 15-16, and it's exciting for lacrosse and baseball, sports like that who haven't made the playoffs a lot to get that recognition and to get that experience. It's something that was really, really good this year. So, and
it's the goal this year. So hopefully we won't say that was the only time we made it.
That sounds great.
That's the plan. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming by, and we really appreciate it, and hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for having me.
All right, no problem. Again, that was current women's lacrosse coach, Cheri Horst, talking about the 2016 team that did so well that year and finished 8-9. And again, the program record for wins, and had a bunch of fantastic ladies on the team. And they were a lot of fun on and off the field, and really good on the field in terms of lacrosse that year as well. So it's great. So Bob, should we get to the fall and kind of backtrack a little? So we'll kind of cruise past men's basketball and women's lacrosse a little bit. But again, we will mention them for sure as we go through this, as we 15 and 16 academic year. Men's soccer that year, 13-7-3, 8-3-1 in the NEAC. Defeated SUNY Poly 1-0 in the NEAC quarterfinals. They had lost, I'd forgotten this, they had lost to SUNY Poly 4-2 4 days prior to that NEAC quarterfinal game. So I remember that being a big deal, that we had not only shut them out after giving up 4 goals, but that we had won that day as well. Lost to Morrisville State in the NEAC semifinals, and then lost to Roberts Wesley in the NCCAA Division I Midwest semifinals. They had a 6-game win streak during the season. Big win in double overtime against Berks. We're going to talk about that when we talk about best games in a little while. This is a big year for Josiah Groff. This is his senior year. 13 goals, 11 assists, 37 points, 5 game-winning goals. He was the NEAC Player of the Year. Edward Bills, 10 goals, 5 assists, 4 game-winning goals. They combined for half of the team's goals that year, 23 of the 46 goals for the men's soccer team. That was a good team, Bob.
It was a good team. It was also a team that we didn't get to see a lot of, because right at the very end of the season, they were in New York State more than they were in Pennsylvania, it seemed, because they went up to Houghton. They were at Cobleskill Poly, had to go right back to Poly, and
then back to
Morrisville, and then even then back up to Roberts Wesleyan in Rochester. So quite a few games there that were on the road, and I'm not sure how much classwork was getting done during that time, but
a lot of Route 81 there in late October, early November for the men's soccer team.
But yes, that was a very good team, and would love to have seen them get a little bit further with in the playoffs and stuff, and I'm sure they would have too. So
yeah, we kept running into Morrisville State in the NEAC playoffs these years.
Yep.
And could not get over that hump at the time. So women's soccer this year, this is Leah Sipes' first year as the head coach. She was a full-time coach. Ken had stepped down the year before. They were 10-11-1 overall, 8-3-1 in the conference. They did beat Cuca 3-0 in the NEAC quarterfinals before losing to Penn State Berks in the NEAC semifinals. We had lost to Berks that year 6-2 in the regular season. So to only lose 2-0, I remember Leah kind of developed a game plan and sort of packed the box a little bit defensively, but did a good job holding off that Berks team. That was one of Berks' best teams that year. That was the year we played Penn State Berks by the regular season. I don't know if you remember this. We played them at B.R. Kreider, that field over there in East Petersburg, Manheim area.
Oh, yeah.
It rained here so much, and we knew it was going to keep raining. We were able to get that turf field. And
that's right.
Brought stuff with us, and it was a long day for sure. But they lost to Houghton in the NCCAA Midwest semis that year too. Kirsten Webster, this is her first good year of soccer, 14 goals, 2 assists. Alyssa Westner, who we talked about there with lacrosse for a little bit, she had 10 goals. Reagan Horst had 4 goals and 7 assists. And then Rachel Kummer, 2 goals and 6 assists. Good year for Caitlin Schuing in the goal, 100 saves, 5 shutouts, 1.53 goals against average. This is kind of the start of Leah's little 2-year run here, or 3-year run, I forget. A team that probably overachieved a little bit, even at 10-11-1. Again, Webster hadn't played because of some issues, health issues. Alyssa's, a good scorer. This is Reagan's first year after transferring from Messiah. Just kind of a lot of moving parts in and out of the program. We've talked a lot with some of our other programs where you can trace the lineage and 4-year seniors and this and that. This is not that at all. This is a lot of, hey, U11 are going to go play soccer today. Why don't you introduce yourselves before the games? We can try to learn some names throughout. It was kind of a strange year, but 10 wins.
Yeah. Well, and you've already alluded to the fact this was a very successful athletic year for the entire department and everything. I think from here, like almost all the teams, the amount of 4-year seniors that we have recognized the last few years goes back to 2015 and 16. It's incredible. These coaches have done a really good job of players are not just coming in and playing one and done. I mean, you go to NCAA Division I, that happens because they're going and playing in the pros somewhere. You don't have that with Division III athletes as much, but there are some key players on this team that they start building the foundations for some of the teams that don't have that foundation yet. And we're starting to move forward here with programs.
That's right on. Absolutely. A couple of names, they come in as freshmen and you're like, you've got to, yeah, I remember them as seniors from last year, the year
Yeah.
before. You forget
Yep.
that, yeah, their freshman year was the middle part of the decade. It's like, oh, geez, yeah, I forgot about that. Women's volleyball that year, 14 and 16 overall, 7-5 in the NEAC, lost to Gaidet in the NEAC quarterfinals. Did have a 5-match win streak that year. We're going to talk about one of the matches against Wesley where they came back and won. Miranda Kemmer, steady as always, 258 kills, 379 digs. Alyssa Bowen, 233 kills, 48 blocks. Emily Olson had over 200 kills, 216. Hannah Geip, who will be joining us for next week's podcast. She had 156 kills. Grace Sherman, 420 digs. I mean, it was a decent team. It was just one of those teams where just played poorly some nights and then would play better some nights. The NEAC was still kind of tough in volleyball. Just kind of that hierarchy year from year where it was kind of hard to beat some of these teams. Again, made the playoffs as they have every year in the program's history, but I think there's some matches in there I'd probably like to have back looking back on it.
Yep.
So women's cross country that year, 4th out of 12 teams, the NEAC championships. They won the LBC Homecoming Invitational, the Charger Invitational, and the Penn State Abington Invitational. It was one of the best teams we ever had. Lambert's in there, 4th in NEAC's. Liz Davis was 10th. Carissa, Liz, Elizabeth Florio, Hannah Zahal, they all had very, very good years. Lamberton actually won the first ever race for an LBC woman at the Charger Invitational there on September 24th. It was just a collection of new runners for the most part, a couple of people from previous teams, but they were really, really good. And we're going to talk a little bit about it then coming up, but this is Rob Ham's first year. He was an excellent coach and got them to do different things. Again, it was a mixture of actual running and then just kind of some stretching, and they just had good runners that year.
Yeah, I think that's where cross country has really started to excel. Is our coaching has gotten better with it. There are some coaches that are coming in. Rob, like you said, Rob was just an excellent coach. He knows how to motivate. Some of the best track and field coaches I've ever seen. They're so good at seeing the whole big picture. It's not necessarily always winning the first place. It's all the complete team action that takes place. And he had some great ladies that came in that year. Hannah Zahal, I mean, her and Carissa Lambertson were just incredible additions to the team. And you add in some of the other names there of Liz Florio and Davis. Now all of a sudden you've got a pretty solid women's team.
Absolutely. And, again, 4th in NEAC championships, that was the best we ever did, to my knowledge at that point anyway. The men got 7th out of 12 teams that year. They were 2nd at the LBC Homecoming Invitational. There were more than 2 teams that year at the Homecoming Invitational, Bob.
Yeah.
This is the first year for Tanner Kroeb. He was 11th at the NEAC championships. We're going to feature him pretty prominently over the next couple of weeks in terms of cross country. And then Ted Holbrook, his senior year here, 16th at the NEAC championship. So 2 all-conference runners. Again, we appreciate your patience with cross country the first couple of podcasts here as we reviewed the decade. We're getting there. It's coming. Next couple of years, pretty good years here for cross country. So this is the start of it. And I'd kind of forgotten about this women's cross country team. And kind of looking back, 3 wins, team wins, first ever win for a runner individually, and a pretty good showing at the NEAC championships. So pretty successful fall. And that leads us into the winter that we had no idea was coming. Well, maybe we had a little idea it was coming, but not to this magnitude. We did talk a lot about the men's basketball season the other day with Phils and CJ. So if you're yearning for more men's basketball knowledge, I would encourage you to go listen to that. But really quickly, they were 27-1, 18-0 in NEAC play. They won the NEAC first ever NCAA Division III tournament appearance. I wanted to write down some of these figures because it's insane. Plus 22.2 scoring margin. We averaged 94.2 points a game. Bryce, 20.5 points per game. He had 107 3-pointers that year. CJ was 17.1 points per game, 9.9 rebounds. He was the NEAC Player of the Year for the second straight year. Dre had 12.4 points per game. Kurt was at 12 points a game. Jordan was at 10.4 points per game. And then Herbie was at 9.9, just under that. You're talking about 6 players averaging double figures. That's how you get to 94.2 points per game or whatever it was. So there was just a lot of games where we crushed them, and it was so much fun. And we're going to get to that here in a little bit. I don't want to step on anything we're going to talk about later here in the podcast. But if you're looking for more men's basketball, check out the podcast from the other day. It was really good. So women's basketball, again, this is such a forgotten thing because of the men. The men really overshadowed a lot of things, but hopefully this podcast will help shed some more light on that. There was a lot of good teams in 15-16. I would call this the year in terms of on the field, on the court performance. This is where you're going to hang your hat when we talk about this decade. 15-16 is kind of the culmination of some things and also the start of some sports as well that we're going to have for the rest of the decade. Women's basketball, 24-5, 19-1 in the NEAC. This is Caitlin Vanderhoff's first season as head coach. Defeated Morrisville State in the NEAC semifinals before losing to SUNY Poly 69-65 in the NEAC final. We'll get to these things in a second. We did defeat Ohio Christian 84-77 in the NCCA Division I Midwest Region semifinals. This is the first time a team from Lancaster Bible had ever won an NCCA Division I postseason game. We then lost to Roberts Wesleyan in the final. They are an NCAA Division II team, so there was no surprise there. We had a 16-game win streak during the season from January 19th to February 28th. We outscored our opponents 1,165 to 766 in the first half of contests. This made the second half quite boring many nights, but nevertheless, we were very, very good. Aubrey, 22.1 points, 9.4 rebounds per game. She was the NEAC Player of the Year for the second straight year. Finished her career with 2,141 points. That's the most ever for any basketball player here at LBC. Katie Stover, 17 points, 73 3-pointers during the year. Shy Smith, 14 points, 14 rebounds a game. Chrissy Pennell, this is her first year at LBC, 10 points and 7.9 assists per game, which led all of NCAA Division III in assists per game. The team was so good. If you want to go and make yourself mad someday or frustrated, go look at the box score of the SUNY Poly NEAC final. It's one of the more frustrating box scores you'll ever read. If you want to go watch the game, more power to you. I'm not. You can go nuts, but I'm out. What do you remember, Bob, from the women's basketball season?
Well, I like you said, everybody remembers the men's team of 15-16. When you see that they were 19-1 in the NEAC, I mean, that's just a phenomenal, ability as well. Yeah, they had 5 total losses and everything, but good grief, of those 5 losses, 2 of them were in playoff games and everything. And the fact, you're right, again, they're putting up major points as well. 22 points, 17 points, 14, 10. Chrissy Pennell, what an addition to the team she became. Just a really good point guard that helped out Katie. Like the 2 of them could run the floor and really see Shy and Aubrey and let them make the plays down below and everything. But then they were dangerous from the outside.
It was an unbelievable team. This collection, I cannot believe these 4 players were on the same team and we didn't win the NEAC.
That's right.
And again, I want, we should shout out congratulations to Chrissy. Just got married last weekend, so congratulations to her and Austin. But there's games where it's not even close, and our only conference loss during the regular season was in overtime to Morrisville State, and then we beat them by 16 points in the NEAC semifinals. So there's even a correction there. It's just a shame they had a bad second half one afternoon, and it again, we probably ought to talk about this women's basketball team the way we talk about the men's team. Yeah. But there's just nothing tangible to show for it. It's going to take you and I talking like this about this team years to come when people say this is a really good team. no, you should have seen a really good team. And it was this team. And like you said, up and down the floor, Christy would put it in Aubrey's hands as she was going to the basket. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Aubrey. 22 points a game, you don't sleep into that. But there were so many times where Shy or Aubrey got the ball from Christy, already laying it in. That's how good of a passer Chrissy Pennell was. They could play defense. They were holding teams under 50 points all the time. We were winning these games by 50 points.
Yep.
I'll just really quickly, we don't usually try to do this on the podcast, but because I don't want to rub it in people's faces. But we were winning 65-22 at halftime in the game against Wilson. And, there's just so many games where you can go through this where, and again, we didn't really have a big team. So like some of it probably looks bad. Why are these players playing so many minutes? We didn't have any players, but the players we did have were so good. It's just amazing to kind of look through some of these scores. And again, like you said, the games we lost by 5 to Ursinus, 7 to Morrisville, again, 4 to Poly. 3 of the losses of the 5 losses are combined are under 15 points. So it's just, I don't know. Again, if you want to, be a glutton for punishment here, the NEAC final, again, we'll just go through it because you have to do this when you go do these things. But we're winning 20-7 after the first quarter. It's 32-18 at half. Even as we get into the fourth quarter, we're winning by a pretty good margin. This is the year the men played before the women. We talked about this a couple years ago. The men had won. This was great. They're undefeated. We're going to the tournament. The assumption was that the women were going to win. They were going to go to the tournament. We were going to have to decide where we were going, things like that. Again, probably some looking ahead and hubris and things like that, but just couldn't pull it off. Stevie Ray, SUNY Poly, 30 points in the game, 8 of 18. She was 11 of 11 from the free throw line. Just couldn't figure it out in the second half and ran out of time coming back. Again, I think there's some players on the team that probably would love to play that game again and do some things differently. But again, these are the things you have to learn in life, and that was one of them.
Well, and there's the biggest difference for women's basketball and men's basketball. There wasn't a ton. There was hardly any bench. I mean, you only had 7 players playing that NEAC championship game, and that could have they won that game. Absolutely, there's no reason they couldn't have won that game, but Poly came out, they adjusted, and they just played a phenomenal second half. When you look at the box score there, it's incredible what the adjustments that they made, and we didn't stop that. And when Stevie Ray was on fire, I mean, she just was on fire. And yes, that's one of those games I'm sure Vanderhoff would love to have back. And like Marshall didn't watch the Coastal loss. I wonder if Vanderhoff has ever watched this one.
I don't know why you would.
Yeah, I don't know either. Other than you're a Zach Filson and you're like, I'm going to learn from it. I'm just going to be a basketball junkie and know what we need to do better. But there are just some games that aren't meant to be seen.
There's plenty of basketball games to go watch. Go watch another game. The last winter sport, men's volleyball, 7-23 overall, 2-14 in the NEAC. No playoffs, obviously, but had a 3-match win streak during the year. Casey Gentry's first year, 296 kills, 170 digs, 40 blocks. Very good first year for the Chargers. Derek Bigley, he'll be our guest in a couple of weeks for the 17-18 year. 198 kills, 141 digs. Jared Martin is his freshman year, all conference player, 630 assists, and Sky Welkers with 55 blocks. There are players on this team that are going to be very important players in 2 years. So this is a good, again, 7-23 doesn't show you much, but after 1-26, it shows you a lot. So there's foundational members of the team who are going to have very large impacts on or off the floor in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, Jade is just building, and you're like 7-23. That's nothing to brag about, but it sure was the foundation being laid to become something pretty incredible. So
Absolutely. So just like with cross country, you men's volleyball fans, you've stuck with us this far. Just give us one more week. Next week's going to be a fun conversation, and in 2 and 3 weeks, it's going to be a lot of fun conversations. So,
Yep.
To the spring, this is a big year for baseball. 21 and 16 overall, 9 and 5 in the NEAC. Lost to Penn State Berks in the NEAC semifinals, which were shortened due to rain. Not the game itself. The playoffs were shortened. Typically, the NEAC baseball and softball playoffs are double elimination. It rained the whole weekend. We were searching high and low for fields that we could play on. We were not to be the host. I think Abington was supposed to host, but they basically gave up on finding a field down there because of all the rain. And we actually ended up at Ephrata High School, 10 minutes from here to play. Again, most wins in program history, first ever NEAC playoff appearance. Some notes from the year: we beat Valley Forge 35-0 on spring break. We had 33 hits that day. We went 11-3 to end the regular season. This is Justin Taylor's best year, unbelievable year. Hit 461, 17 home runs, which led the NCAA Division III. 56 runs batted in, 65 hits. 31 of his 65 hits were for extra bases. Will Welsh, 415 batting average, 39 hits, 31 runs batted in. Braden Elliott had 46 hits. Eric Carroll had 43 hits, hit 350. Jensen King had 36 hits, 42 runs scored. Caleb Mayer, 35 hits. Zach Leonard was 6 and 4 on the mound for the Chargers. Nate Burns was 4 and 3. It was just a great all-around team. It's such a shame that the NEAC playoffs weren't their normal playoffs, because to be honest, I don't know if we would have won, but we were built to play multiple games in a weekend. Between the pitching and the hitting, we were built for double elimination tournaments. And that's at the time what the NEAC was. That's at the time what the NCAA tournament was. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not saying that we didn't, I'm not saying that we were going to win an NCAA championship, but the team was built to hit. The team was built to play long games. And unfortunately, we couldn't do that because of the weather.
Yeah, that game was just one of those odd games. I think if you talk to TJ, coulda, shoulda, woulda, there's lots of those things there. It was just one of those games that things just didn't go quite right. And it was still an exciting game. I mean, our guys were in that playoff game, the entire game up there at Ephrata, but just came up on the wrong side of it.
Absolutely. It's just a tough way to have the season end for the Chargers. And but like volleyball, a lot of foundational guys, a lot of great guys, the Gabe Yoders of the world, the Eric Carrolls of the world, who are just great foundational program guys. And that's before you even get to, again, I don't want to say real baseball players, because I don't want to take it. Gabe was a great pitcher. Eric was a great hitter. But this is, Will Welsh's first year. Justin Taylor's best year. Guys like that. Caleb Mayer, who's a great leader on and off the field, stuff like that. So it was just a great collection of guys. This is what TJ's best job, bringing guys in who could play multiple positions, deep bench, good bullpen, things like that. So this was a fun baseball year. Softball team, 15 and 22 overall, 6 and 14 in the conference. They had a 5-game win streak. They beat Karen in a doubleheader, 35-1 and 23-2. I remember that day. There were lots of walks that day. The problem with this team, again, a pretty good collection of players. They couldn't beat Berks and they couldn't beat Wilson. And those are the 2 teams you needed to beat. 3 teams went to the playoffs. And then we struggled with Abington and St. Elizabeth that year. It was too many days where we didn't play very well. And it probably cost us a chance to have a pretty successful season. Courtney Kozier hit 417, 43 hits. Julia Diarigo, this is one of her best years, probably hit 392, 51 hits, 48 runs scored, 17 doubles, and she was 7 and 12 pitching as well. Sam Denson hit 349 with 37 hits. Zoe Sen's first year, she hit 343, drew 20 walks, scored 36 runs. Rochelle Kane hit 340, 32 runs, 32 hits. And then Kelsey Collins, of course, 7 and 10 pitching, 2.78 ERA, 81 strikeouts, just 19 walks. Again, there's good players on this team, but just struggled on the wrong days.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of names that you're listing there, they were solid players, and just we're not able to get everything fully together. So
We talked women's lacrosse, again, 8-9 overall, 4-5 in the NEAC, 3-1 in games decided by 2 goals or less. Pretty unbelievable stat there. Alyssa Western had 64 goals, 16 assists. Miranda Kemmer, 47 goals, 16 assists. Hannah Thompson, 30 goals, and then Naomi Otis, 24 goals as well. Men's tennis, they were 5-10 overall, 3-2 in the NEAC. They lost to Berks in the NEAC semifinals. They won their final 3 regular season matches. Ted Holbrook finished his career 25 singles wins, pretty good mark there. 7 players earned NEAC all-conference honors between doubles and singles. A good men's tennis team. Again, we're getting there with men's tennis. We'll have a couple of good podcasts here coming up from men's tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Women's tennis, 4-9, 2-5 in the NEAC. Won the final 2 regular season matches. Sarah Wetzel and Morgan Adams played well. Stephanie Bless was a nice surprise as well. Again, every team except for women's tennis and softball made the playoffs in the NEAC this year. It was a fun year for a lot of teams. Huge successes. We had 4 NEAC players of the year: Josiah Groff, CJ Dunstan, Aubrey Folger, and Justin Taylor. I'd have to go back and look through. I'm not sure how many schools have had 4 NEAC players of the year in one year. That's maybe Berks they got pretty good in baseball and soccer and things like that. But I mean, both basketballs, the baseball, the men's soccer, I mean, these are kind of like the largest, more prolific sports the NEAC has back then and probably currently.
Yeah.
So to win the NEAC player of the year in all 4 of those sports was a big deal. This was it's weird. I mean, we can talk about this, Bob, if you want to, coming up. I mean, you got individuals, the Josiahs, the CJs, Aubreys, Justins, then all the teams were good.
Yeah. No, it was such an active year. I mean, when you stop and look back at what all was accomplished in this one athletic year, Charger Awards was a big deal that year. And it is becoming the foundation for 4-year athletes. What we have accomplished there, and doing that. And again, now we're starting to head into Lancaster Bible College really is becoming a significant part of the NEAC. And the other schools are starting to recognize that too. But like you said, how many other schools can talk about having 4 players of the year? What a fun project that could be for someone.
Yeah, somebody. Homecoming that year, we hosted Morrisville State. Men's soccer lost 1-0 that day. It was a rematch of the 2014 NEAC final. Women's soccer beat Morrisville State 3-0. Reagan Horst had a goal and an assist. We also had the homecoming invitational on Thursday of homecoming week that week as well. I think that was one of the last ones we did without a timer. So I'm sure I was way stressed out and not enjoying much of anything.
Yeah. And yet coming up, we've got some wet homecoming and like NEAC championship races. Nothing like the good rain and putting some of our Charger Sports Network guys out on the carts getting soaked.
Appreciate you, Tyler. Thanks. The categories for 2015-16 of best game: men's soccer versus Penn State Berks. They beat them 3-2 in double overtime. We trailed 2-0 early in the second half, came back to tie it, and then Edward Bills won it with a penalty kick winner again in double overtime. That was the game that was at in Manheim or East Pete or wherever that is there at the Writer. Women's volleyball, they defeated Wesley 3-2. We trailed 2-0, down 2 sets, and then we trailed 9-5 in the 5th set before coming back to win. I remember that was a weird Thursday night game where if you were lucky enough to be in the gym, you saw 2.5 hours of pretty good volleyball and a comeback win for LBC. 16 kills that night for Emily Olson and Alyssa Bowen. We talked about these 2 men's basketball games the other day. But beating F&M at the Messiah tournament there, first ever win against F&M, 94-66. And then beating Morrisville State, obviously, in the NEAC final to move to 27-0, beat them 97-71. Women's lacrosse, we talked to Cheri about this game with Penn State Abington. We won 13-12. We trailed 10-9 with just under 8 minutes to play, scored 4 times in the next 2 minutes and 41 seconds to take the lead. And then baseball, they beat Dickinson that year 11-6, the first ever win over Dickinson. We were actually 2-3 against Centennial Conference opponents in 2016. That doesn't happen very often, but
nope.
Nice thing to hang your hat on there for the baseball team that year.
Yeah.
Any other games you can think of there, Bob?
No, I think you've hit all the major highlight games. I mean, it's just incredible. Probably, and it wasn't at our place, but women's cross country, you know, you could add into there for as good as they were and the opportunities that they had to just win and do some things as well. So that was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is sort of a Homer podcast. So the women's basketball NEAC final was a really good game.
Yes.
Unfortunately, but it was a very good game and a very, very tense second half. And unfortunately, you could kind of feel it slipping away, and there's just nothing you can do. But it was a really good game. But again, we're major homers here on these podcasts, so it's not.
that loss probably goes back to the Coble School loss for men's basketball. I mean,
they're in their own. That's a separate category. We're not doing that podcast. So if you want to go look, I mean, because you can put the Berks baseball game from this year in that one too. They can all go in that category, whatever you want to name that category. I'm not going to do it here on the podcast because I probably think one up, but I'm not going to do it. So, biggest advancement for LBC, obviously men's basketball getting national attention, but more importantly, we talked about it with Phils and CJ a little bit. Maybe you and I can pause here for a second, but the sense of community here at LBC and all the fun people were having. I mean, we really did. We had to sell tickets. We had to do tickets because we couldn't let anyone else into the gym. People, were sitting up in the mezzanine. They were, how can I get in? Can I just come watch the game? I mean, like we said the other day, you know, my dad, we still worked for the newspaper at the time, covered our home games like it was his beat. I mean, we were like, you know, the Yankees. Like, hey, I'm the Yankees beat writer. He was kind of like the Chargers beat writer that winter. And I mean, that was fun for me on a personal level just to have him with us for all the games. But you had to come see them. I mean, we joked the other day, but we had guys who lived in Lancaster who wanted to watch good basketball. They came here. They didn't go to F&M for that year or E-Town or whatever. They came here and they wanted to see it. And employees and staff and faculty and, you know, all the students. I mean, it was just, you had to come. Men's basketball took precedence over the rest of your schedule for those 2, 3, 4 months.
Yep. That you talked about faculty and staff coming, the faculty staff kids that came. I mean, they started looking up to these guys. And like you said the other day, you know, our basketball players, and it wasn't just CJ, it was almost every guy on the team was getting recognized if they were out and about in the community. And, you know, whether they were running to Sheetz or McDonald's or Chipotle, you know, somebody knew them and they're like, hey, Mom, that's the guy from Lancaster Bible and stuff. So it was definitely such a fun year for men's basketball and getting the local attention. Zach, you've had some good relationship with some of the local TV reporters, and our buddy up at WHP 21, you know, they started giving some understandably good attention. And then Channel 8 actually, you know, shows up and does some stuff as well. So it's been pretty cool to watch that we are not just a Bible college. We're a Bible college that is competitive and leaving some good testimony in the community as well. You know, I think that's also one of the cool things when even if we win or lose in a championship game, getting some emails from the opposing school's fans or the opposing school saying, hey, I appreciate coming to where you guys are at. You're putting on a good tournament. You're doing things well. And that's not because of anything that any one of us did, but because we want to do it well and we want to honor God with what's going on. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I have a picture from when we lost to Worcester in the NCAA first round. We prayed at half court and with them. I can't imagine they did that a whole lot after their games. And it wasn't at their place. It wasn't at our place. It was a neutral floor. But I think the platform grew so much. It was just kind of amazing how quickly it all grew. And Jason up at WHP when he was there, I think he's in Houston now. He did a great job covering us. WJL was here. Pat Brinsby was here a lot. And, you know, my dad and even the school did a good job promoting it too. And it was just a lot of fun. It didn't, you know, it was a lot, but it just didn't feel like work. It was so much fun. The guys were fun and it was a fun way to play basketball. You can win with defense and you can win in the 50s and 60s and good teams can do that too. And then that can be exciting too. But just like Zach said the other day on the podcast, like he'd never drawn up so many plays with lobs. Well, it was so much fun, and they were all so athletic, and I don't know. It was just a really great time, and it was a fun time to be at LBC. I don't think we ever lost the sense that what we were doing was bigger than basketball. The basketball was really important, but I feel like LBC as a whole did a good job of keeping that in mind. Anyway,
Yeah.
as that season went on. Another thing, big advancement here for LBC that I had was the first year for Leah Sipe, Zach Filzen, Caitlin Vanderhoff, and Rob Ham. These are some great coaches we've had here over the decade, and I'm not taking anything away from other coaches we have, but these were all, excluding Rob, they were all full-time coaches, brought in to recruit, and brought in to, again, expand that platform of what we had by winning games and bringing in mission fit kids. And, you know, these coaches had lasting impacts to today, even though some of them weren't here very long, but they all had big impacts and kind of helped propel the program at the time, wherever it was, to the next level. All these 4 or 5 programs were better after this coach left.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you know, like you said, some of them weren't here super long. If you want to talk about LBC athletics as a whole, Pete Beers has just done a phenomenal job of figuring out what's vision look like for the school. I mean, we're still not even to the amount of sports that we are today in 2016. We're going to be adding a couple more teams here in the next 4 years. But when you and I both started at the college, we weren't like, it was a big deal just to get the Division III status. And before that, Pete's been there, what, 20 years now?
Yeah, I think this is his 21st or 22nd year.
I think there was 3 athletic staff during that first year for him. Him, a department assistant, and maybe one other part-time person or whatever. The athletic staff is huge right now. It's a big department at Lancaster Bible College, and it's been great to see Pete leading through that. And do we all get it right every time? We sure don't, but there's been a lot of good that has come from all this.
Absolutely. Next category is best memory. For me, I got to take my family to the NCAA Division III tournament game down there at Catholic. And I think they came to almost every men's and women's basketball game that year too. It was just, they wanted to be a part of it as well. I mean, Jack was younger and Eli was less than 1, but I mean, and my mom was, what time's the men's game?
Yeah.
What? It's at 6. Are you coming? Yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm like, okay. And then I don't think she missed a home game after a while. And my dad, like I said, was working, and it was just, you had to be here. I think that's one of the memories I'll have, is just, you had to be here. You had to be here. It made you feel good. It was fun to watch them. And what's going to happen tonight? I mean, you kind of thought they were going to win, but like, how are they going to do it? Are they going to get to 100? Are they going to score 70 and a half? Like, yeah. We had real conversations like, are they going to score 70 in the first half tonight? And we almost did one time. Hosting the men's and women's basketball Final Four, the stress of that, we kind of had a thing where people were mad that we weren't giving tickets to other teams. Well, sorry, man. We had to have conference calls about that. It was again, most of the stress was good stress, but every article, every piece of info, like, people couldn't get enough of what we were doing here. And that was basketball for a lot of the year, but even baseball and lacrosse and soccer in the fall, like, the articles and the games were so heavy, but it was fun to be a part of it and to do the things for it. And man, I don't want to venture a guess to the hours we worked that NEAC week, but it didn't really matter. We were so into it. And not that we aren't now. I mean, it's hard now because there's nothing going on, but even last year or the year before, I mean, we were into it, but it was just, I would love to have that feeling again at work or not. Like, it was just, it's hard to describe. I hope that it came off that way, that we were enjoying it, because we were having so much fun at these games.
Well, I mean, it's been fun watching you expand the platform of communications and everything, because this is a year that it became extremely important that live streaming was working and your articles were up to date and everything. I mean, Zach, you have just helped grow LBC Athletic Communications to a point that people do really count on it, and they love reading the articles that you put out. Parents who aren't able to come into all the games, they count on our live streams, and they're loving hearing all that stuff. I mean, yeah, men's basketball that year was phenomenal. It was funny. You talked about Jack and your family coming to a lot of the stuff. Reagan playing soccer. That Jack is one of her biggest fans. Him wearing her jersey to soccer and to lacrosse and everything. I remember all those things. And Eli's just a little guy yet at that point, but you're watching your boys grow up through all this has truly been a fun thing as well. So the NEAC Final Four weekend, it was a lot, and what a letdown when the women weren't able to get to the other side of it. But at least like the weekend was over at that point too, and they got to the finals, which we knew they were going to. So
right. No, it's amazing. I remember it being a relief when that was over, but then the next day you have to get ready for the selection show and stuff like that. So it was just a fun couple weeks, and at that point, but it was just a fun season overall. Who won the year? Our female nominees, I would have Aubrey, two-time NEAC Player of the Year. Kirsten Webster, 11 goals in soccer and 8.8 points a game for women's basketball. Alyssa Westner, 10 goals in soccer, 64 goals in lacrosse. And Julia Diarigo, she's a terrific softball player, 51 hits, 48 runs scored. On the men's side, Josiah Groff, we talked about, CJ Dunstan, Bryce Williams, Justin Taylor, and I forgot to mention that Justin was a Division III All-American that year for baseball too. Again, such a great year in terms of teams, but these are ladies and gentlemen that are on the top of our lists in terms of whether it be one season or a career. I mean, some of these records that they have is anyone going to score over 2,000 points again? I mean, hopefully, but yeah. I don't know. Like that, the fact that we got to witness Aubrey and CJ together is pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, they're just, both of them have set some records that it might be a long time before we see some of them drop. But who knows? This is the beginning, and we're bringing in some really good athletes that they have opportunities to do it. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, right on. So, and the last category, one thing we would go back and change. We mentioned a little bit. I'd get the rain away from the NEAC baseball playoffs. That's for sure. And I put a couple more players on Stevie Ray in the second half, just to throw it out there. But no, I had a question for you, and I sent this to you. And would you trade the perfect men's basketball regular season for a win or two in the NCAA tournament?
Boy, that's a tough question. Maybe, because nobody to this point, this was our first men's team to make a Division III tournament. Women's soccer and women's basketball had gone to the Division III tournament, and nobody has come close to winning yet. Our guys had opportunity in that game. And yet, CJ's got a bit of an injury. I think somebody else was sick that day too. There's so many what ifs. I also think that, I don't know, overconfidence can be a killer. And so sometimes that late season loss or an early season loss just motivates and drives. The losses in 15 certainly drove the men to do better in the games that are coming. The loss in 14 in the NEAC championship game to Morrisville, that drove them to be a better team in 15 or 14-15. I mean, everything just keeps building here, and the loss in the NCAA tournament, you're going to see in 2 years, drives men's basketball to be a better performer and a better opportunity in the Division III tournament, even though that game came up 3 points short. But we're going to see that win column sometime soon. I really do believe that. And so would a loss have helped? Yeah, it might have. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I wrote it down because I was thinking about it. So I'm looking at our schedule. I don't even know who we would have lost to. like a late season loss to, stop the streak and help us refocus our attention. Marshall talked about that after losing to, Messiah early in the year. They refocused, and then the Guydet loss helped. And okay, it was good. I don't know who we would have lost to. So we beat Guydet on February 18th by 12 down in Guydet. So if we lose to Guydet that night, we probably, do we drop out of the top 25? Maybe. It gets close. So then do we get less respect, and now we have to go play Williams in the first round, and we don't get to play Worcester? I don't know. It was such a great ride. So
yeah, you and I have talked about the NEAC conference. There's years where there are teams that are just really good, and there are years where there's one or two teams that are just really good. That was just one of those years that I'm not sure, like our guys, Morrisville dominated the NEAC men's basketball for so many years. And Joe Smith can just continue to put out some really solid players up at Morrisville. That year was just not one of those years for him. And I think if we had to lose a game, it was going to be to an F&M or a Messiah or an E-Town or an Eastern even, but our guys handled all those games so extremely well. That F&M game, that probably is one of the most fun games.
I would not pick that game to have it be the loss.
Agreed.
That set the season up. And again, F&M still has a way better and deeper basketball history than us. Don't get me wrong, but I hate to keep using them as a whatever, because they're a great program, but just the way that it happened that day, and it was and again, they're in our county. Like if on a clear day, you could probably see part of F&M from where they're that close. So yeah, it wouldn't be that. I'm looking at the Guydet box score from February. We were down by 8 at halftime, 36-28, and we outscored them 48-28 in the second half. So it was just, again, it goes to the point of the team. Again, I don't want to make this all about men's basketball again, but they could just score 50 points in a half, kind of sneeze it, and we're at 50. And so I don't know. I don't know if a loss would have helped or not, but it was a question to pose, I suppose.
I'm telling you, had we lost that Cairn game at Cairn, that would have been a major wake-up call for the guys too. But they did know how to win that game. They did come around and figure out how to get the W out of that game. But that game was way closer than it ever should have been.
Absolutely. And I think if you play the Worcester game 10 times, I don't think Dan Fanley is scoring 45 points in very many of those games. So it just, again, there's lots of things that transpire. I think he was open a lot of the night, but at the same time, you let someone score 45 points and only lose by 13, and we were making a run there in the second half. It's just one of those things where you can replay it so many times in your head. It's just, we talked about it the other day. It's so strange. You have this 5-month run, and we're thinking about all the days, and this was so great, and my family's there. And then the buzzer goes off, and it's over. It's all done, and there's no NCCAA, and you just have to go back to the locker room, and you're all done playing. It's just hard.
I'm not even sure the guys would have been ready to go do an NCCAA tournament at that point.
I don't think, but
the talking to get them motivated to do that the previous 2 years was enough.
Yes.
And to be able to do that this year, wow, that would have been really tough. Because our teams have figured out Division III basketball and Division III sports overall. Take nothing away from NCCAA, and especially now that we're playing all in Division I, sometimes that's the only thing that's left in NCCAA because there aren't as many Christian schools out there as there once was. But when you're playing Division I, a lot of those are NAIA schools, and they are giving scholarship money out, and it is hard to compete against some of those schools at this point. I'm thrilled to see, women's basketball did go on and they got a win against Division I and NCCAA. They were in other games and stuff. It's tough, but Yeah. 15, 16, it made getting ready for the spring season that much harder, that loss. But there was a lot to be proud of from the spring season then too.
Absolutely. And to your point, 15, 16 for men's basketball anyway, sets up 17, 18. They're way more prepared for Christopher Newport, and they played a lot better. And that was a great game too. And we'll get to that in a couple weeks here, but it all lends itself to learning experiences. It's just a shame that it ends so quickly, so fast. But anyway, I think that'll do it for 2015-16. A great year. Again, probably if you're going to tell me to rank the years of the decade, this is probably number one. It was a fun year on and off the floor, some great characters, some really good players, just a lot of fun work professionally, personally. It was great to be able to enjoy it. Sitting at the scores table and my dad to my right, that was kind of cool. Covering the game. So I think it was a really fun year and probably the top year for sure.
Yep. No, definitely. And when you stop and look at the overall picture, realizing how many of our teams made playoffs that year, that's just unheard of, for teams across the board. And now we're going to see some of, they are not a lesser sport. They're just not as in the public limelight, but some of those sports are really going to be coming around in the next few years now too. So 15, 16, great foundation. We've talked foundation. Everything's been a foundation, and we just are able to keep building upon it. And it's been fun to watch teams grow, develop, see coaches come and go, see more full-time coaches added. This is not the Lancaster Bible College I graduated from 30 years ago. That's for sure. But it's exciting. It's been fun, and we're still a Bible college and maintaining that. And we're a lot of good things going on.
Absolutely. So that's 2015-16, a great year, and a lot of fun talking about it over the course of 2 podcasts here this week. So Bob, thank you.
Yep.
And see you next week for 2016-17, and go Chargers go.